Hey everybody, this is Joel from Moving to Mexi.co. Bienvenidos, bienvenu, benvenuto, benvino, hoş geldin, alan bikum, wassalam alaikum. Tried to get a whole bunch of welcomes there for all of you today. And by the way, if you have a favorite language, if you, whatever your first language is, if it was anyone other than those, and you would like me to say welcome and hello in a future video, comment below. Tell me the language you would like me to learn how to say welcome or bienvenidos in. I think that's kind of fun because we are more than just a channel, I think, that caters to, majority of our audience is from the States and Canada by virtue of, I think, us being Canadian and an American, living now in Mexico, and with English being our first language. But we want to expand those horizons a bit, and would love to have more viewers from all over the world. Anyways, welcome. We are live here at Casa Victoria. Buenas tardes to everybody. We are trying to do this live stream because it's a very special day for us today. It is our 2nd year anniversary. So literally on August 20th, 2020 is when we did our very first video here in Bucerias and launched the Moving to Mexi.co channel. So we thought we would change things up a bit by pushing our Saturday video to Sunday, and then doing this little live stream today to have a chance to share what's happening in the news in Mexico. So I'm actually going to go old school here. Maybe in the future, if we continue to do the live streams, we can get back to the live stream software where, a couple of us can be working it and we can share some screens and bring out some of the, some of the news content on the screen as you're watching. But, I'm going to go old school with my paper here and kind of go through the news. So it was kind of a funny article that came across my desk this morning, and it was about the 200 peso enchilada. It basically sparked a serious outrage in Michoacan, which is a state in the north of Mexico. So the mayor there is vowing to crack down on high food price stands. So it's pretty funny. The inflated enchilada prices have inflamed local authorities in the Michoacan city of Pátzcuaro. I have a hard time with that pronunciation of that city, but Pátzcuaro. And a tourist took to social media last weekend to basically denounce what he felt was an outrageous price for these enchiladas. They were being sold for 200 pesos per order, or approximately $10 US. The visitor complained, noting that they had even been sold without chicken. Sin pollo. What's going on with that? So the complaint got the local attention of the authorities in the city, and where Mayor Julio Arreolo said his administration would take an inventory of all the city's food stalls in order to keep such an incident from happening again in the future. I think that's kind of hilarious in this time of government overreach. We actually have government that is getting involved in the pricing of enchiladas. So even I got to the state's tourism secretary, Roberto Monroy. He also weighed in saying that Federal Consumer Protection Agency Profeco would. Can you imagine you're like a taco stand on a street and you're actually getting the bulldogs from Profeco to come in and investigate your pricing practices? Anyways, pretty interesting. Just so you can see, it's not all roses here in Mexico. We do have some silly things that can happen. And I thought the 200 peso enchilada outrage in Michoacan was pretty darn funny. So, what do you think about a 200 peso enchilada? Would you order one? Would you complain? Or would you just walk to a different vendor to see if you could get a better deal? So in between little articles here, I thought would go to some of the comments, see if you have any questions. I see that Paul is on the chat, so he can be answering any questions that you have just via the chat. And if I see something of a question that I can answer myself, I can do that as well. So moving along to the next news article, And it's kind of funny because, sometimes we get comments, not necessarily questions, but comments about, do we have the same kind of political correctness and the same kind of ideology, specifically on everything from, gender to race to general politics. And, the general answer is not so much, but it is starting to creep into society. And one of the big ones right now is, again, causing a little outrage in, I wouldn't say throughout the country, but certain people are angry about the food called the gordita. Now, gordita basically would be, for lack of a better translation, a fat woman, a fat lady. But it also is this scrumptious Mexican dish, and basically like a stuffed taco, and it's called a gordita. They're super, super yummy, but there's a movement to change it because they want it to become gender neutral. So not a gordita or even a gordito, but maybe a gordite. So there's this whole thing happening in certain universities where instead of calling like kids, for example, niños and niñas, they want schools to start implementing changing the Spanish language, basically, creating a new word and calling all kids niñez. Okay, so niñez. So there's no gender attribution to it. I personally think that's a little bit ridiculous. Don't touch the Spanish language. It's been around for a long, long time. We're already having that kind of thing happening with the English language, and in, let's call it English Western society. Why don't we just kind of leave it there? But I'm also interested to hear your comments and your thoughts on that. Should Mexico and other Spanish countries start to de-gender their language? And specifically, Spanish is it is a language that has genders. So there's female endings and there's masculine endings, and that's just the way the language is structured. Usually when you're talking to anything that is plural, and you could have a mix in the audience that you're speaking to, meaning a mix of men and women. It could be one woman and 20 men, and then it just defaults to the masculine ending. So in this case, niños, if it was 10 boys and one girl, would be niños. If it's 10 girls, it would be niñas. If it's 10 boys, it's niños. And I was curious to hear what everyone has to say on that. Comment below. We got a lot of comments on the last video about should foreigners be moving to Mexico, and just kind of some of the outrage we see in Mexico City about foreigners moving there. But it actually had, we got quite a bit of comments and almost a little bit of debate, and most of it very polite and very reasonable. And I would like to hear from you on what you think of the gentrification of the Spanish language to kind of get it to one new gender-free way of speaking. Anyways, any specific questions here? Let's see. Paul, I know, is answering some, but let's see here. Laura asks, I'm going to see if I can pin this, because it's going to be, pin the message. So that allows me to pin it. All right. Has the higher than normal summer tourism in Bucerias started to slow down, since most families with children in Canada and are back at school? You know what? August has definitely been a little bit slower here in Bucerias, but it's been a lot busier than it has been in past. And I guess the way we gauge it is mostly on our vacation rentals. We have had a lot more bookings. I'll have to talk to Jillian, but like my gut is like we're somewhere around 70 or 80% occupancy, whereas in the past we'd be closer to zero. So that's kind of a cool thing to see. It is definitely a mix between Mexican nationals who are vacationing here and Americans and Canadians that are actually making the trip to Mexico in the summer. So it's kind of cool to see. Tracy B, would be so much easier to learn the language without having to think about the O and the A. I guess so. But a matter of fact, if you if you do learn the language and you make errors on the O and the A, you don't even have to worry about it. Everyone's going to know what you're talking about anyways. I think that's kind of like the least of your worries. The best thing to do is just like practice learning words and not worry so much about complete proper pronunciation. That's just going to come over time. I was explaining this to my daughter who's looking at going to university overseas, and we're looking at different universities. And does she go to Portugal where she'll learn Portuguese? Does she go to Spain where she already has a degree of Spanish and she can elevate that? I'm like, well, you still have a lot of room to grow on your Spanish language, but it's like if you put the time into it, like in the first year or two, you're going to like 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even potentially 10x your language abilities. But once you're at a point of fluency, the learning rate, the curve goes right down. You're learning at a much slower rate because you already have a huge vocabulary and comprehension, but you're still improving. I'm continuously learning different sayings, continuously learning different words, continuously learning how to improve my thought of the Spanish language. So it never does end. So let's get back to the Mexico news. So this kind of like touches on our last video where we were talking about foreigners moving to Mexico, a lot of foreigners coming on extended foreign visas, which are basically just under 6 months. And I found an article about changes, brought in by the influx of foreigners in Oaxaca, and it's a cause for concern, and more along the lines of the same thing that we're seeing in Mexico City. And the article in general was a little bit more on the opinion of it being a bad thing, and then they kind of ended with it, well, could have some good parts, and mostly it's just the economic. And we still get a lot of responses from people that, that the people in Bucerias that we were interviewing were just being polite, but I don't know what else I can say other than I've been living here 9 years. I know a lot of the people that live in Bucerias, on that side, a lot of the locals, and I know what the prevailing sentiment is. And the prevailing sentiment is that all of us who have moved here and making Mexico our home, we're being welcomed with open arms. And I guess it doesn't matter how many times I say that's the reality. You're still going to have people who don't believe it, and that's okay. But the general consensus here in Bucerias, at least in Bucerias, is that this is definitely a good thing. And that's not to say that it is not coming without problems. And just in Oaxaca, you have seen some good things that have happened where some really dilapidated parts of the city have started to become improved and starting to like breathe a lot of life. And instead of being dilapidated, people are fixing up these old bodegas, these old stores, and creating restaurants and cafes and making it a little bit more of a dynamic place. But anyways, I found it interesting that they're also going to start doing more intricate study on Oaxaca in of itself, and how it's helping and how it's not. Like you have one example here. In 2001, one gentleman was paying 1,000 pesos per month for his studio, which was $50. And then in 15 years, the rent rose to 10,000, which is 500, which basically forced him out. So it's kind of sad in that regard. But, I don't really think this is specifically a Mexican thing. This happens to be a thing that's a global issue, especially in cities that are getting rejuvenated and old areas are being brought back to life. With those old areas being brought back to life, are bringing in a different type of consumer and putting some upward pressure. But at the same time, some of the locals, or a lot of the locals that are living there, are also getting the economic benefit. So, really, it is a weighing of the pros and the cons. I'm not going to profess to be an expert and know what the exact solution is. I definitely think we need to have, some kind of balance. But in general, a solid immigration policy is a good thing for any country. Travis Jack says, is there a specific website program you recommend to learn Spanish? Good question. I like the Michelle Thomas method, and you can Google Michelle Thomas. I also use the Mondly app. That's Mondly. So think of Monday, but with a Mondly, Mondly. And you can learn all sorts of languages on that. But what I find is what works for me is I'm like, for example, I'm learning Arabic right now. I'm also continuing my studies of the Turkish language, but focusing really on Arabic. So I study with the Mondly app about an hour and a half a day. And that's more of a repetitive type app where you're kind of getting peppered with sayings, you're getting peppered with words, and you kind of like space. You don't want to look at one lesson and just repeat that every day or 10 times in a day. You do one lesson and then you maybe come back to 5 or 6 days, and you have the spacing between the repetition. And that spacing between the repetition actually helps you not remember, but actually start thinking about what that word actually means. So I use Mondly as one source. Second, I use the Michelle Thomas method for modern standard Arabic. So you could download Mondly and use that for Spanish, and also download Michelle Thomas and use that as a secondary way, because the Michelle Thomas method really starts getting you to think. There's no note taking, there's no remembering, there's no writing down. You are just, he is teaching you how to start thinking about the language and incorporating that into your way of thought. So that is the second way. And then the third way is to start interacting with people. So you can sign up. There's a lot of websites right now where you can hire a tutor, you can hire just someone who you can speak with. So you go online for an hour, once a week, twice a week, and it forces you to get out of that comfort zone of just being in your room studying. Like, you actually have to talk now, physically one-on-one with someone. Watching Netflix videos. Everyone watches Narcos, so watch Narcos. But one of the tricks is, don't watch it with the English subtitles. You want to start watching it with the Spanish subtitles so that you're reading along in Spanish with what you're hearing. Now, in the beginning, you're not going to understand much of what is going on, but if you keep watching the episodes time and time again, a lot of the same words are being used, a lot of the same sentences, everything's very repetitive. So eventually you're going to start learning. You're going to start learning how to think, and what you're actually hearing is going to become a little bit more second nature. And then finally, you've got to get out and use it. So if you're shopping in Mexico, you're at a restaurant. Like, I remember when I was like a really beginner in Spanish, I would be in a restaurant using my Spanish, and a lot of the waiters would default to English. And I would just respond back in Spanish. So if someone, and then I hear this complaint lots, well, everywhere I go, people speak English and they just respond to me in English, then just keep speaking back to them in Spanish. And even if they keep speaking back to you in English, who cares? Because you're still having to think in the Spanish language. Like, what are you going to say in Espanol as opposed to English, right? So that is, that's my long-winded version of all the things that you should be doing. But I can definitely say, it works. Like, after studying Arabic for about a month now, I probably have close to about 150 word vocabulary. I can't quite read it yet, but I can read most of it. The Arabic alphabet seems complicated, but once you start studying it and understanding it, it actually makes sense. It's a very mathematical language. So if I can learn Arabic, anyone of you can learn Spanish, because Spanish and English are very, very close. English comes from French. Modern day English comes from French. I mean, it just does. There's very little English that's left in that language. And Spanish and French all come from the Romance languages, Latin languages. So if you're an English speaker, you can definitely learn Spanish. So don't be scared to just do it. Every time I come outside, I think there's a lot of pollen. Someone was saying, "Are you okay?" You were kind of coughing the other day, but outside when I'm speaking, it seems I'm like inhaling, some of this pollen from all this newly grown plants because of the rain we have here. So I'm taking a sip of my beer. All right. Now we can look at the good of Mexico, and we have to also look at the bad. definitely you're going to see pockets of crime, pockets of violence, and it's not just regular violence or regular crime. It can be pretty nasty stuff. There's increased criminal activity that puts now Zacatecas on the U.S. List of do not travel states, and I think the U.S. list you have to take with a grain of salt. Like I'm looking at the list here right now. So like do not travel, level 4, that means don't go there, is Michoacan, Colima, Sinaloa, Tamaulipas, and Zacatecas now, and Guerrero. Reconsidering to travel is Baja California, Chihuahua, Guanajuato, Jalisco. Okay, so here Jalisco, which is Puerto Vallarta, they're saying reconsider traveling here, but honest to goodness, I don't know how much trouble you're going to get into traveling to the Puerto Vallarta area. That's why I say you really need to take these levels with a grain of salt. And then it kind of goes down to, increased caution. And I think we are here. Nayarit is level 2, and normal precautions are level 1, which is Campeche in the Yucatan. But hey, the U.S. Department of State basically congratulated Nayarit, the state of Mexico, and Coahuila for improved security levels, and therefore upgraded the level in 2022 travel alert. But I mean, so this is like one dude, and he's got the power to basically say travel there or don't travel. And I really just question sometimes what their true motives are. And going to like the next article I have, I mean, a shootout in Chicago the other day resulted in retaliatory violence between 2 rival gangs. Like it was like a war zone, and police are there trying to attend to this, and they're attending to like some guy who was shot lying on the street, and meanwhile there's a gun battle going on all around them, right? So the moment we hear something like that happen in Mexico, we're like, oh my God, like that's just happening in Mexico, like 24/7. And you know what? It happens in the States as well, and on a more ongoing basis. You could Google something like that, and you're going to see countless articles, coming up of these type of shootouts happening in regular American streets. So, and is that to say like Mexico is like better or any less dangerous when it comes to the chance of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? I don't know what the real answer is. I only know from my own experience of living in this region of Mexico for 9 years is that we've felt very safe and secure, but we use common sense, right? We don't let our guard down, and we just try to be smart about how we live our life. And then the last headline, because we see, going back to Oaxaca, going back to, some of the positive things that are happening with development here in Nayarit and Jalisco, you're seeing the opposite happening in San Francisco, Cleveland, Portland, where there are countless articles coming out about the death of downtowns, the death of these cities, and how activity of just people working in the cities and coming to the cities have dropped, in one case in Portland, by 50%, right? And the 5 fastest and 5 slowest or dying cities right now are, Chicago, Detroit, Portland, Cleveland, and, San Francisco. And it's the things that they're really highlighting are the countless homeless, the countless drug problems, the countless amounts of crime. Again, like the shootouts with gang violence. It's, these are the things that are happening in, your own backyard. And I can say for one thing in Mexico is we aside from some of the bigger cities, there's not much of a homeless problem here. People may live poorly, but they still have a home and they're not on the street as much as what you would see in some of the big cities in the States. And that's not to say that there's not homeless people here. There are. But I think going to anywhere in Los Angeles or San Francisco, Portland, Washington, you're going to see that homeless situation is still pretty rampant. All right, so Keith Hanna says, "Hola, Joel, shooting every day in the Toronto and the GTA area." I mean, that's a good point. I do tend to notice that stuff on the news as well, and I don't mean to pick on the United States. It just happened to be the articles that I pulled today. But in Vancouver, tons of gang violence. Toronto, tons of gang violence. career criminals, gang criminals. I mean, they've been operating for years. Like, we have narcos, we have cartels. They exist. And probably to the same extent that they exist in Mexico. I think Mexico's a little bit more of the Wild West still when it comes to it. But these people they're the same. They're in the same business. So you have to say, you can't really target Mexico and say, well, it has cartels. Well, so does the United States, and so does Canada, and so does pretty well almost any country around the world. All right. Any more questions out there? Let's just see. I'm gonna kind of go through and just see if I see something. It's kind of hard sometimes when I'm going through the top chat. I think Paul's done a good job answering a lot of the questions. If I see something that kind of pops out, then I will answer it. Anyways, before we end the stream, and again, thanks for joining us. Muchas gracias for joining us on this Saturday for our second year anniversary in this live stream. Is you need to make sure that you attend our 2 videos tomorrow. We're doing 2 videos. One is a premiere and one's just a regular video. And we are going to be asking 2 questions in one of the videos. Okay, so it's a 2-part question, and I'm not going to tell you what the question is right now. But the first person to answer both questions correctly in one text, okay, in one text, is going to win a week stay at this new property that we just finished renovating for Phil Guyman. And then, like always, we're going to take everyone who's commented, and it doesn't even matter if you got the right answers. Just if you comment on the video, we are going to put you in the randomizer, and we're going to draw randomly for a second week vacation at this newly launched property. But here is a little clue. Okay, so I'm not going to give you a total clue to what the question is going to be, but I'm going to tell you which videos to watch. So go back and watch those videos today. And the first one is this Phil Guyman's worst retirement decision ever? And maybe Paul can just put that into the chat. And the second is buying a condo for under 100,000 near the beach, or under 100K near the beach. Watch those 2 videos, study them really well, because the answers to the questions are in those 2 videos. And if I can ask everyone to please do me one favor, the only thing that's annoying with the live stream is that all of your chats are lost. Okay, so I can replay them, but they don't show up on the regular video. So if I can get every one of you to commit to me one thing, okay? So once this live stream ends, go back and click on the video, because it becomes then a regular video, okay, that you could just watch again. You don't have to watch the whole video again, but just go into the comment selection and ask a question, or cut and paste your question, or cut and paste your existing comments, or make a whole bunch of comments. It really helps us with the algorithm, because YouTube sees that people are commenting more on the videos, and then it starts to put it more out there, because it's seeing it's getting some Discord. And the other thing is, if you see people, like all of you are now in a community, if you're commenting on our videos, feel free to like people's comments and then comment on their comments. So then you get a little bit of a Discord happening. And again, that's just a little tiny thing you could do that can help us get the videos out. And it also starts building our community where all of you are kind of chatting on a regular basis with one another. So again, when I end the live stream, just asking for one little simple favor, one commitment, is go back to the video and leave a comment, and make sure you hit that like button. And I think that's it. Paul, do you want to make any text? Did I miss anything here? I wish Paul was here. It would have been a little easier, but he has some things to do. It's Saturday, but we're going on a road trip next week, and we are going to try to do a live stream, and we'll do it from on location. I think that will be kind of cool. And yeah, Paul says be nice to each other. So an iguana just fell out of the tree. I wish I had a camera to show you guys this. Like, one of my cats just leaped after an iguana, which I don't know if it's a good idea, and the iguana fell out of the tree. So I'll have to go check on that. anyways, yeah, be nice to each other. So if someone comments, you can, you can debate it, just have a civil debate. And I think if someone's like a complete troll and a complete dick, as we like to say, yeah, sometimes it's just best to ignore them. I have a hard time doing that, but I'm getting better. All right, so Paul will leave those video links. I'm going to also put the video links in the actual video after this is done. So that gives you another reason to go back to this video, and please leave us a comment there. That will help. And I think that's about it. I'm 30 minutes. Thanks again for joining us. Muchas gracias for joining us this sábado, this Saturday. You guys are awesome, and thanks for the 2 years of support. We really, really appreciate it, and we're almost at that 10,000 subscriber level, and I look forward to giving away $10,000 worth of vacation credit. All right, on that note, everybody, nos vemos hasta luego and adios desde Bucerias, Mexico and Casa Victoria.